I've had 57 varieties of jobs. Yes, I've done quite a few things. Worked in factories. I've worked in the licensed gaming trade. I have worked in the licensed alcohol trade. I have, as you see now, worked in a school. My major job was I worked in surgery with a doctor. I liked that very, very much. And I worked with my brother in his company, delivering and doing lots of things that to do with manufacturing. But unfortunately, as things happened during that time, there was a slump in manufacturing and the company didn't do that well. So I went on from there to work for the British Safety Council. Then I went around all different factories in Wales and I was driving on the roads, which were motorways. They started to put motorways in, but believe me, I had the road to myself. It was lovely, and that was the difference then. No bridge in the 60s and 70s. Open air swimming pools. No sports centres.
So what did you do as like the leisure activities? Like
leisure activities, swimming, dancing, swimming and dancing.
Oh, so were they like the main thing, like that people loved to do? Like were they?
I think dancing was quite popular then, you know, because that's how people met each other then. Because ladies didn't go out to pubs and clubs, not very often. If they went for a drink, they went with a husband or a boyfriend, and usually with a meal. You know, but it was always men went drinking. So they didn't. So they went dancing, and they were very, you know, quite a few halls around where you could go and dance. And the girls were always there first, and the boys would come last of all.
I'm surprised. On the topic of dancing, throughout the 50s, the music was quite classical. But what was the
changeover into rock and roll?
Yeah, what was the impact? Rock and roll. What was the impact for you?
Well, for me, I loved the Rolling Stones. They were my favourite. But of all of them was Elvis Presley. He was the dream maker. He literally was, because everyone, I think all the girls loved Elvis Presley. And he would be telling fibs if you would say, oh, I didn't like him, because you did. Every girl liked him.
Even if you pretended.
But as I say, from a woman. I think all the men fancied themselves as an Elvis Presley. You know, they all, and there was Cliff Richard as well. He was on the scene. He was on the scene.
He was there, but not as big as...
Not like Elvis Presley.
Was anybody local?
Yes, we had Tom Jones from
Tom
Pontypridd, and I can remember going to see him in the Capitol Theatre, and I don't know why, being big-headed probably, I thought he'd bound to see me in the audience, and I thought he was singing right at me, but there we are.
What type of, like, where did you go? What type of foods did you have? Like, so
Well, there was a place that I loved going to in Cardiff called the Homestead. It was in the underneath the Capitol Theatre, really. It was run about that area, and it was quite a few restaurants there. They had the Venetian, they had the Connaught Rooms up above, and then they had the Homestead underneath. And it was really iconic because you had these wooden tables, and they'd serve you scampi and chips, chicken and chips, steak and chips, and there was only those three things on the menu, and it was really well done. Delicious food.
So it was sort of like amazing.
Oh yes, it was a thing. Oh, we'll go to Cardiff, we'll go to the Homestead. You know, that was, and we'd plan it. I mean, other than that, up the valley, it was the fish and chip shops if you went out. There weren't an awful lot of places around for couples to go and have a meal. They did start doing gambarinis in Porth, which was quite costly, really. Quite costly. It was a cafe, really. But people went there in the 60s. And the other thing we used to do was to save money all through the year, and we'd go to a big dinner and dance. And they had it down in a place, and this is Bindles in Cardiff. And you'd go and you'd have a meal, and then you'd dance, and then you'd have buses to bring you home, and then be singing on the buses coming home. So those were the things that we did, and you'd look forward to things like that. because that was it. Because in those days, televisions weren't prevalent. I mean, you'd go and see Mrs. So-and-so on the television if you want to see something special, you know.
Yeah.
But like you got televisions, you don't think twice about it. You got electronic
you don't really
lifestyle. You
take it for
don't
granted.
realise what we had.
The Rhondda Valley wasn't built for all these cars. There was one car in Pentre, and that was Mr. Cool the butcher, because he was rich and he had a car. And lucky for me, my mum and dad were friendly with those two, so I used to have rides in cars and go around the village. But the valleys are not built. They were built. I was run over when I was a little girl because I was walking behind a horse and cart. And when I told somebody that, they said, "Crumbs, how old are you then?" I said, "Well, a bike came along and I was walking behind the horse and cart, and it was just a three-wheeler bike, and he knocked me. I was only a little girl, but he knocked me flying because there were no cars, just horse and cart used to bring the milk and used to bring the bread. So life was differently. And there were no takeaways. You had home cooked food, you know, there were really no takeaways, you know, so things were different. And I can remember fridges coming in and washing machines. I mean, when I was a little girl, I was born in 1944 because I'm 72 now. And then when I was a little girl, I can remember my mother scrubbing like this with a scrubbing board. I think they had a funny name, like a dolly or something. I can't remember really. But then she had a washing machine, and it was like having a new baby in the house. So that was a new thing as well. But the strange thing was, we had always had home cooked meals and everything, but none of us were fat. The only takeaway was fish and chip shops, but none of us were fat. You know, we all looked well, but nobody was fat. So yeah, it was lovely.
So what about the economy? What jobs, type of jobs did your parents have?
Well, my mother, as I say, was a midwife, and my dad was a miner. And then, like most of the men in the Rhondda Valley, and then I got married in '65 when I was very, very young. I was much too young. I was 21, and I married a boy from Pentre, which is the next village up, as you know, and he had been to university and he became a school teacher. And there were no jobs in the Rhondda then, because they had plenty of school teachers, and they were crying for school teachers in England or Scotland. There was nothing for my husband to apply for in Wales, and so he applied for a job in England, and so I went to England to live until 73. So that's what my life was like with an old school teacher.
Can we ask, when you were in school,
Yes.
like when you were on the playground, what type of games did you play?
Oh, we used to play skipping and whip and top. There was like a little top, and we all had whips, and we used to whip them. And the best game was kissing the boys. Kiss chase. That was the best game. And I had long legs, and I could catch all the boys, and especially Anthony Evans, because he only had one leg. And he was great. He didn't mind at all. He was born like that, and he was lovely. He was my first boyfriend, my first kiss. And we all the girls ran after Anthony Evans because he had, those were the games we used to play, and hopscotch, of course. But kiss and chase was the best. That was the best game.
So I'm going to move on more to fashion and music. Did you notice any extremely big changes in music and fashion when it progressed through the 60s and 70s?
They came together. The Beatles, Mary Quant, she invented the mini after the mini car. Yeah, but the Beatles, I think, and Cilla Black. And then we had the mini skirt, and I think they came in tandem. I think they came together.
Yeah.
The music, rock and roll. Yeah. I can remember Bill Haley and the Comets when rock and roll came in. I was about 15, 16, standing on my satchel, screaming. And Bill Haley, he was gormless. I mean, he wasn't even handsome. But all the girls were screaming, so I was going to scream. And I personally, honestly, I preferred classical music, because my mother and father loved classical music, and my parents were involved in amateur operatics. So I was dragged along as well, which I've loved ever since. but that's what I preferred. But I wanted to be like all the others.
Rebellion.
Well, no, I just wanted to be part of the gang.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't going to say, I prefer Beethoven, or And then I had a job in Cardiff, because I wasn't working in the valleys. I was a shorthand typist. I left school. I was naughty. I didn't work hard in school. Take note. And I had a job in Cardiff as a shorthand typist, and all the girls in the typing pool were going to see these Beatles. Now I thought I was going to the zoo. And then they said, no, it's a group, it's a pop group. I thought, I said, yeah, I'd love to come. Yeah, I'd love to come. Who was standing on the seat screaming? Me. They were terrific. And they changed a lot, and Elvis Presley, rock and roll. And I think the clothes came with it. I think they were in tandem, to be honest. Not that I was very fashionable, because I was a bit shy, believe it or not. And I had the long legs, and you can imagine me in a mini skirt. I looked like a stork walking around with such long legs. I was 5'6" when I was 10 years of age. So I was always the tallest in the class. And that's why I was shy, I think.
Generally, I would say it was exciting. We'd go up the mountain a lot. We'd go out all day on the weekends. And the parents wouldn't see us. We'd be out playing, whether it was cricket, to the tennis courts, right? I got my own tennis racket there, lad. Right?
Oh my gosh.
My own wooden tennis racket. Well, it's wooden, amazing. See? Yeah. It's a wooden one. And then came metal, and of course nowadays they've got graphite and tungsten, and more modern, it's a composite racket. But I got my rackets from those days. And then we go to the tennis courts in the summer when Wimbledon was on, and we pay our money in the public courts in Treherbert, or in Treorchy, where our tennis club is now, right? And even on the main D down here in Ton, and play tennis when Wimbledon was on. We'd play football during the football season. We'd play cricket.
Oh yeah, and with stuff like with all the changes that are from 50s to 60s.
Yeah.
One of them was music. I thought that was such a big change.
Yeah.
Sort of revolutionised sort of the world. What was the impact on you with
my
fashion
gosh.
music?
Immense. It was immense. I became Elvis overnight. I was 8 years old, 9 years old, and with blue suede shoes, Heartbreak Hotel, I became Elvis. Suddenly my hair was like this, but then all of a sudden it was brill creamed, and it was pushed back. I've got photographs, right?
Oh God.
And then the jeans, the sky blue jeans had come out, and winkle picker shoes, teddy boy shoes, right, with the winkle pickers. All the boys had to have those. And then we'd go to the Aniswen Community Centre, which used to be called the Coffin. Now, why it was called the Coffin, I don't know, but it was a community centre, and every Friday night there was a dance there, right? They'd have pop and crisps, and every Friday night all the boys and all the girls would go there, and at the age of 8, that's where I learned to jive. Now, when you do your 50s, 60s and 70s, right? Because they're still jiving, still carried on into the 60s, right? I know the twist came along, but in the very beginning of the 60s, the jiving was still the dance. And what I used to do, get up on the stage and sing Elvis songs for free pop and crisps. The chap that used to organise the dance every Friday night there, I'd get up on the stage and I'd sing, Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight? Are you sorry we drifted apart?